Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Procrastinator's Pit Stop. We have another exciting guest here with us today. I am sitting with Ash Lonare. He is a seasoned startup and tech industry veteran with deep expertise in building next generation B2C and B2B products. He provides feedback, tips, insights, and ideas for launching ventures from the ground up and donates the majority of his profits to charities and causes. Ash, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Grace. I'm so excited to be here.
And we're excited to have you here as well. Well, I'm always excited about this topic, but I'm a little biased. But before we dig into it, we do like to have a little icebreaker on the show. And the question for you today is, which cartoon character do you resonate with the most and why?
Interesting. So it's been a while me watching cartoons. I mean, I time to time go to the cinema hall for Disney movies, for sure. I think the last one I watched was Moana. That was really good. But if I have to like resonate, I think the one which stuck to my mind for a very long time. I used to watch this cartoon show called Powerpuff Girls, where there was like three girls, and that there was like a scientist, or like they used to call him Daddy or something. And I always thought that like I resonated with like all of them. Like I had these three girl powers with me, and like I used to talk. My mom used to tell me like whenever this show was on air, it's like you're so excited to see it, and then after that, I used to like do and jump on the bed and things like that, and it stuck to my mind for a while. So there you go.
Well, I like that, because all three of them have very different aspects, but they're all sort of together, right? So I guess maybe that's it, right? Where you take all these different attributes and they all work together, even though they're so different. They'll work together. No, I like that. I
Yeah,
like that
yeah.
example. It's been a while since I've heard of the Powerpuff Girls too. I mean, yeah, probably dating myself, but yeah, was that 90s?
It is 90s. Yeah, somewhere around, I think somewhere between, if I remember it correctly, 1995 or 2003-ish. Is a long period I mentioned there because it's very vague for me right now.
That's all right.
Yeah.
It all gets blurry after you hit like once you get to your 30s, everything's a blur. That's
Yeah,
what
yeah. The other day we were joking in the pub. I was sitting with my partner and a couple of friends and their family members, and I was like, "Do you still remember your first crush name?" And everybody remembered that, but very few people remembered like the second or third. It's like, okay, that's interesting. And then this question was like on the table, like, what what did just I think the first one we always remember, but it's the second and third we forget. And I totally forgot about the second person I was dating, and I was like, it's amazing, isn't it?
Hmm. Well, I mean, that particular data point, I don't think is too embarrassing. I go back. I remember my first one. I was 6 years old, so I remember my first one. Yeah. Second one, but the second, third, and fourth. I mean, I know which ones they were. I don't know what order they came in though. So,
Good one,
so
good one, good one.
interesting.
Yeah.
So Ash, let me ask you, how do you define procrastination, and what does it mean to you personally?
It's very difficult. First of all, I mean, like, you being in the similar space. First of all, being a founder or being an entrepreneur is itself quite difficult. I mean, it's advertised as very fancy, like, being an entrepreneur, founder, or business owner, you'll be driving Bentley, and then you have these wealthy people around you, and you're sitting down in these ballrooms for all these meetings. But it's actually not like that. If you go through a couple of journeys yourself, you understand that it's more isolation, working late hours by yourself, figuring out things which you have never even thought about, and then doing things which are the super most boring things in the world. For example, accounting, filing your taxes, things like that. And then for me, is like I get excited about things like creating new product features, talking to customers, understanding their needs or why they abandoned the cart or why they canceled their subscription. So this is like exciting things for me. And then when it comes to like, writing an article about one particular pain point or doing accounting, which we just talked about, comes to the boring part of which is necessary. I'm not saying that it's not important or not needed. It is required. It's just boring. And then I think for me, procrastination is something identified in my brain like, is it the boring side of the table? And if it is the boring side, I would do it later. Maybe at some point of the day, I have to do it, but I'll do it like when I have less energy, or maybe I don't need that much attention to put it in that task. And that's where, you know, I say, okay, let's do that later. I don't know if that makes sense at all.
No, that makes sense a lot, and I mean it describes a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of high level executives too, right? Mm. We call those the dreamer archetype, right? Like it's fun to create, it's fun to do the other things, but then what do you do with the other stuff? What do you do with that boredom? But before I sort of comment on that, because that's a very good point. What would you say? And we know there's no silver bullet. There's no one right fix for everyone because everyone is definitely unique in their reasonings. But what would you say was your sort of secret sauce to getting over procrastination?
I don't know. When it comes to secret sauce, mostly I learn things with experiments. I think I've been like that since from the beginning. I used to break things up, open up with my small, screwdrivers, and my mom used to shout. I was raised in India in a typical Indian family, right? And breaking things up is not considered there as much as like a creative or innovator. It's like more, oh, you broke things and now we have to buy something. You're responsible for it. Um, and I think when it comes to the secret, so I would like to share this particular story. It's not relevant at all. So there is this platform called medium.com. I don't know if you've ever came across it. It's started by some guys, ex-Twitter guys. Basically, you go there and you write your articles, and then they publish it on it. So I was reading through this article from by this gentleman who was talking about how he got over his procrastination of going to the gym early in the morning. And I was like, I couldn't even wake up early. That's one of my biggest problem. And how should I do it? And when I was reading through his article, I realized that there is something which he was missing, which is splitting your problem into small chunks or small pieces. So that day I promised myself that, okay, I wake up 7 a.m. every day. Let me wake up 6:50. And I put that in writing in the comment. So that comment still gets like on that particular article on medium.com, by the way. So if you want, I can share that later. So I put that comment that I just wake up 10 minutes before every day. Try to, and let's achieve that procrastination bit. Like I want to wake up at 6 instead of 7. And I started doing that. Very annoying every day. Early in the morning, instead of 7, it was my alarm was ringing at 6:50. Slowly, I got into a habit, and it's not that bad anymore. And here we go. I nowadays wake up at 6. Maybe that's a sauce. Like you just have to split things into small pieces to like get over it. I don't know. Yeah, that's my formula basically.
No, I like that one. Always breaking up your task into small bits always makes it easier. Gradual changes too are very important with new habits. I mean, and actually that's a really good accomplishment right there. Getting up at 6 instead of 7. I mean, there might be those that minimalize that sort of minimize that or minimize it, and we ourselves tend to minimize our own accomplishments. But I mean, when you look at your resistance, I mean that is really that's really where our accomplishments come into play, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So now, and thank you for sharing, by the way. And so I wanted to touch back on that boredom piece just because it was so big, and so it is so big and it is so important to our lives. Well, first let me ask you, do you know what boredom is?
I think most of the millennials, they don't. Maybe I'm completely wrong, because we lived in this generation where, like, we started with, I don't know, calculators, and then we got introduced with CD players and then cassette players, and then we got into 1998 where the Google was launched, and then by 2003 and 4 we started looking at Pentium for processing computers around us and schools and universities and all. So there was a lot of content around us, right? And then again, because we were like growing up, we had so many things to do, not just studies, but games, extracurriculum activities. So I think from a boredom perspective, I haven't actually experienced it that much. I always been, surrounded by things. Recently, I was traveling via train from Sofia, Bulgaria to Istanbul. And this was like in the middle of one of my assignments, but we had like a couple of days off. So I just called my partner and she flew from London. And then we were traveling from Sofia to Istanbul. And this is like a train where you can sleep overnight. So like in the evening you board and then you have to sleep. No internet connection. I don't really like to read books. My partner does, so she wasn't feeling that bored. I couldn't eat more because when you're in Sofia, you already had a lot of food and it was cold. So I can't go and stand out the door. So that night, it was around 12 hours. We started 6 p.m. and then the train was supposed to reach Istanbul around 8, but it reached around 9:30. That time was the real boredom I felt. I don't know if it is the specific definition of boredom, but that's when I felt it. What about you? What's your thoughts on it?
So being bored about something or being bored in a situation, and I mean, you did hit the nail on the head in that it's not entirely our fault. I mean, we are programmed, and this actually goes all the way back to human evolution.
Mm,
When we were, naked and alone and afraid, running through the forest or mountains or wherever, we were always on the lookout for anything new because new things were almost inevitably dangerous, right? So fast forward to the advent of, smartphones, social media, notifications, commercials, infinite scroll reels. I mean, we've always got something new to stimulate us, and the brain is attracted to new things because, again, new things, we better learn about this to see if it's a threat or not.
mm,
And that's sort of the basic one. But I mean, once we get overstimulated and we've had that stimulation. So what you experienced was essentially you were sitting there, and because you've had all this stimulation before, you're sitting there and you say, "I know well, you don't say this. Your subconscious and your brain says this. I know everything I need to know here, and there's nothing important here. Therefore, I'm bored.
mm,
So, I think I know everything there is to know about this tiny room I'm sitting in." And I have this discussion with my daughter about school all the time. She's like, "Oh, the class is so boring." Like, well, you know what that is? Because you don't find any value in the class because you either one, you think you know everything you need to know about it, therefore it's no longer important, or two, you just don't know why it's important. So therefore, it's by default it's not important. So what do you do in those situations? You just say, "Okay, what am I missing?" And it could be as simple and I do this all the time. I've shown people like with pens, like
mm.
literally a pen. Like, how exciting is this pen? Not exciting at all, right? But do you know everything about this pen?
I don't think so. No.
Well, I mean, you might know it's
I
a
mean,
pen. Let's say it was your pen,
yeah.
or let's take your microphone. It's a piece of equipment. Do you know everything about that microphone?
I mean, I know that I use it every day for having a call. It has this cord which connects with my computer, makes my voice sound really good. And I know it needs electricity, maybe, to work, or some kind of power force from which comes from the computer. But I don't know anything how technically it works inside this box. That's all I think.
Right. And now that you might have one or two reactions to that. The one reaction typically might be, okay, so I don't need to know how it works or whatever, boom, done, boring. Why would I want to talk to about the microphone for the next hour? But I bet I could get you to talk about the microphone for the next hour. I'm not going to
Mm,
do it, but I bet I could get you to do it.
mm,
And it's just because the brain by design is a problem solver. So if you ask it, what am I missing? Like, what am I missing? then that activates the curiosity center, which activates, not a very technical term, by the way, I'm just keeping it light. When you start to think about what it's there, the brain now thinks, oh, wait, I don't know this. Wait, why are you thinking about it?
mm,
It must be important. It's something new. Therefore, we need to check it.
mm,
And so simply by doing that, it's not going to alleviate all the boredom in the world. I mean, it just won't. But you'll find that it gets to a level where it is, it's more bearable. And I mean, even sitting in a concrete room with nothing, like nothing else, you could still sit there and look at all the crevices and say, well, do I know everything about that little crack? Do I know everything? Well, what made the crack? I don't know. And then you start creating,
thinking
and then
about
you're no longer bored, right? So that's kind of what boredom is. It's just, you think that you know everything about it, or, you don't know why it's.
interesting. Yeah, I think something similar might. So before I started my first venture, I used to look after a couple of big communities in London and in Newcastle. So expats in London, I grew it from 0 to 1,000 members. And then when I moved to Newcastle, which is somewhere around, well, not Midlands, just a little bit above than Midlands in England. And then that's where we started startup communities. I met a person there. His name was Dan, really good individual, around 60, 65 years old, very intelligent, wise person. And we started this venture together where we started looking at different communities and we hired people in back office in Mumbai to look after all the transaction and everything. But I always say to him, like, Dan, we pay quite a lot of money to these software companies to do the work for us, to create this platform for us, and we should do it. And he always responded back to me that, Ash, I am actually too old to even think about it. I would prefer to pay for it instead of like creating something new. And that annoyed me a lot. Maybe it's just the way our brain gets rewired when we grow old. I don't know. And I asked him, like, why do you think you're too old for that? Because, we all know founder of KFC, Warren Buffett, they got their success late in the years, and he was quite wise around that sort of vertical. And he said that I have worked in so many risky ventures in my life previously that I don't find it exciting anymore. It's like, okay, I mean, that's one of the things which makes my blood flow really, really fast. How it's different. So I think I take your point. Either you don't know about it or you haven't, haven't uncovered all the layers of it. But maybe there is a small element of what you have experienced in the past that might be a small element somewhere in the corner which triggers this boredom sort of, feeling.
No, I like that. I like that story, and it's true. And it's difficult because I've noticed this to a small extent. Again, I'm pushing 40. I'm 39. Even I've noticed that if we have these preconceived notions about things, we tend to judge and discard more rapidly, and that's kind of our superpower as we get older, and that's why you see people in power, or people in positions of power in companies and ventures that are, generally speaking, they're a little bit older, and it's because they're used to making decisions faster. They're used to getting these preconceived notions, right? But the issue becomes that they can be blinded to the new things, or be averse to trying the new things because, again, they think it's not important because they know the way to do it, or they just don't know about it, but therefore, it's not really important. It's interesting that you mentioned that he wasn't interested in doing that anymore. So my question to him would have been, if you're not excited in doing this anymore, what is your motivation for doing it?
Yeah. And yeah, I did actually ask him this question, and he was like, I just this. So the thing which we were doing together was generating us quite a lot of revenue on a monthly basis because we were selling quite a lot of tickets for events for our communities and everything. The only motivation for him in that particular business was the money, because he didn't want it to look after the back office. He didn't want it to look after the sales. He had this business built up. I partnered with him. He just wanted me to do everything and then generate the revenue so that he can utilize the profit. I think what motivated him was traveling, because I saw that in that year or two when we were partnered together, I was working late nights all the time and he was traveling around the world. But I couldn't, it was my job what I was doing as a partner into the venture. But I couldn't say, oh, why don't you help me out with this and that? Because he was totally not interested. I think the only part he was interested in is, and one of the biggest visual pointer was the moment we hit COVID, he said, okay, no more for me. He literally gone out of the business saying, I don't want to do it anymore. Yeah. So I guess the only motivation for him was the money part. And I think that was the trigger for me. Like, I have to do it myself. I think I have been procrastinating myself also during that time period, because I could have got out of that partnership and started my own venture that time. And it would have been much easier for me to get funded, get, more traction on my platform. But I did not do it until the COVID hit. Actually, not even after a year. I waited until 2021 to start. So around end of 2021. So I think there was a part of procrastination triggered inside my own character. But yeah, so that's how I got to learn about it, and then eventually that was the start point for me.
You mentioned COVID and the procrastination in COVID. And I think that we need to understand a few things about procrastination first. The first one is that you're not broken, you're not lazy. You're just operating based on programming. And I think especially during COVID, there's lots of people that are super hard on themselves saying that there was no progress, that nobody did anything. Well, how could you? I mean, you want one of the main catalysts for procrastination. It's fear of the unknown, or not knowing how or in what ways you can do things.
Mm,
And we had our world turned upside down. We had to relearn how to do everything either remotely or not at all, or within very strict different criteria. So I think everybody kind of needs a pass on that. Now, if you tell me that you're still procrastinating for the same reasons in 2024, 2025, might need to look at that. I think everybody needs to get a pass on COVID.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, definitely. And I'm glad that I did start it towards the end of 2021, because now I speak with these people. I mean, recently I interviewed a person from US. She's, I think, 65-year-old, and she loves to knit. And she sent me an email. I think she's French by the name, I realize, and then she moved to US with the family quite long back ago. But now they live in, maybe I'm not pronouncing it correctly. It's Indianapolis is a place. Okay. So that's where they live. And she contacted me saying, Ash, I don't know how to use your platform, first of all, but my son, who runs a cafe, reached out to me saying you could utilize it. What do you mean? Why do you want to use my platform? You're 65 years old, you're retired, you're having fun. And she said, yeah, but I want to knit, and I want to knit with my friends or people who like to knit. And said, okay, so what have you tried till now? So she said, I went to my church where I tried to connect with people and then get people who are interested in knitting. Couldn't find many people there. Then I tried meetup.com, where I created a community, paid them around $300 for a year, but that didn't work out for me. And every time I had some problems, they reached out to me and said, they didn't actually revert it back to me. I sent an email to them and I said, okay, what what do you want me to do for you? She said, I want hand holding. This is the word she used. And I said, okay, why do you use this word? And she said, because one of the person on Twitter said to me that I don't understand tech well, so I need somebody to handhold, to help me with hand holding and create things for me. I said, okay, now I understand it. Tell me, what do you want to do? She said, I want to create a community locally in my town, and I want to invite people to knit with me and share their reasons why they want to knit, these sweaters and hats and everything. I said, okay, that sounds very, very interesting. So we jumped on the art circles. We created a small community for her. And then I said to her, Bridget, this is the link I'm going to send you on your WhatsApp number. Just send it to the people you think will be interested. And what we will do is we will also spread it around on the different platforms like Facebook, Twitter, where people are hanging out for the similar interest. We managed to get her 6 other people who like to knit in her city. And then the first event she hosted was not at her place, but in a like a common place, not church, but like a community hall sort of place where all these people came, sat down on the chair and started knitting. That triggered quite a lot of conversation. And then the second event, I just looked into our group and then I found, oh, there are like more than 10 people now in the group. And then she started hosting the events in the cafe of her son, which is again really good because now not just her, but her son is also making some money, right? Because people are going in the cafe. And now we have a good relationship. She literally messages me via email every time she has a problem. And then we just keep communicating that way. Um, this is what she wanted to achieve from last 1.5 year. She tried quite a lot of things, but it didn't work out. So I think the only one thing worked out is the initial email communication, and then I jumped on a call with her because I think that was easier for her to explain it to me, like what exactly she wanted to do. Long story short, now she has, I don't know, 16 people in her group, and all of them are paying her $10 a month just to be in the group. And then they also go into the meetups which she creates in her son's cafe. So I'm like, okay, sometimes you need somebody to help you out to, get out of this place where you want to do something. Not saying that she was procrastinating. It was just, I think she was not getting enough help to achieve what she wanted to, if you know what I mean.
No, that story is really interesting to me, and I mean, she was just listening to it. It's not that she didn't have the skills to do it, and she actually had one thing going um, that not many other people do. In that, she wanted to create that group, but she said that she wanted to connect with people. If I'm
Yeah,
correct here, I'm
yeah,
paraphrasing your story. She wanted to connect with people, but she also wanted to talk about why they liked it. And
exactly.
that's one of the keys to actually staying, in a habit is, why are you doing it? Because when your why is high, your cost is low.
Mm,
But it's interesting that you say that because a lot of times, and this is something for a lot of people, is we don't necessarily like to admit that we need help. The fact that she even came to you and said she needed handholding, that's a pretty big accomplishment. Although, maybe as you get older, you're not as concerned about image, but I know that there's this huge stigma around, I needed help to do this, or, oh, this person
mm.
helped me to do that. And then the ego in us is, oh, wait, no, that means I'm weak. No, it just means that, you recognize that you didn't have the same strength and you put those strengths together.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, she doesn't pay me anything because her group is not over the threshold limit for our platform. But I felt so much connected with her when we were on the call that I felt like, no, this is the real value, which you can add into the community. And me being connected with a lot of, charities and non-profit organizations here in England, I thought that, okay, this is something which could bring value to her, not just to her son, but also the people who wanted to connect with other people who knit together. I never thought in my life that being into SaaS vertical, I would ever touch someone's life who is interested in knitting. This never came into my brain ever when I was going through all this process. So it's very, very interesting.
Well, I mean, it's true. Sometimes we start building things and we don't really fully grasp where they could go or what they could be used for. Again, there were people who they started out. What was it? I think it was Habitat Habitat for Humanity, but don't quote me on that because I do know it was just a small group of people that originally just started sort of, going around and helping people build things.
Mm.
I'm pretty sure that turned into Habitat for Humanity, and they didn't really plan it for that, but I'm not 100% sure. Definitely don't quote me on that, but there was a group that was like that for sure.
Mm. Very interesting. Yeah. And what are the sorry, I'm not supposed to ask a question, but I was very interested to when you mentioned that, we we behave it because of the programming. What's your opinion or maybe a formula to get overcome of these procrastinations we have in our life? What do you do or how okay, how do you help your daughter if she's procrastinating?
Well, well, my daughter's a little bit different. I do speak to her a little different. I speak to her like an adult, but I do
Mm.
speak to her a little differently because I'm supposed to guide her and I'm supposed to the best of my ability. So the way that I start with procrastination is just pick something, anything that you feel like you're procrastinating on, and then just break it into those smallest steps until you can identify where the drainer is or where the complete block is. And I'll give you an example. Something that personally happened to me. So I don't go to the gym. But I do go out and, do some weights. I have an exercise bike in the garage. So summer comes around, my daughter's out of school, and I say, okay, you know what? It's nice outside. My daughter's home from school. I want to be able to go do stuff with them as a family. The exercise can wait until she's back in school. You know, nice, easy out for me, right? So she gets back in school, and I get back in my routine. Up at 5:30 every morning, go out to the garage, do a little bit of cardio, do a little bit of weights or whatever I'm doing, and it was all fine until about the end of October, kind of the beginning of November. And I found myself starting to drag my feet. I was waking up a little bit later. I was not going out to the garage. I was
Mm.
just completely avoiding it, right? And I said, okay, hang on. What's going on? So I broke it down. Okay, so what are the steps? Okay, so you wake up at 5:30. That's really not an issue for me. Okay, so go to the garage and do the exercise. Like, well, that's not really the issue for me because I'm used to the exercise.
Mm.
And then I said, "Oh, go to the garage. Oh, garage is cold. I don't want to be cold. I don't like being cold." So therefore, that was the drainer, or that was the resistance, the resistance point. So once I added the extra step of, okay, get up in the morning, go out to the garage right away, turn on a little space heater, and then get a cup of coffee and go back and do the exercise. Then I didn't procrastinate anymore. And so the real way to kind of conquer procrastination is, in the first case, you have to know yourself. Now, this isn't always possible right away because sometimes we have trauma in our past that has left us with tendencies to avoid certain things, and we might even think that we're past it, but the programming is already in there. So I always used to do the example that I almost drowned when I was a kid in swimming lessons. So as a result, I never learned how to swim.
Mm.
So I figured that, okay, you know what? That happened. I'm over it. Whatever. It's not going to affect my life anymore.
Mm.
It wasn't until recently, actually, about 6 months ago, that I finally realized that incident was attached to obviously me not liking water sports because I don't know how to swim. Okay, that's a given. That's obvious. But the other ones I didn't really realize that's also where I got a touch of rescuer syndrome because I knew what it was like to feel helpless, even though the people were right there, supposedly, that were supposed to help me. And so therefore, it sort of dominoed into, a little bit of rescue syndrome and a little bit of, I had a problem asking people for help for a long time
Mm.
because the people that were supposed to help me almost let me drown. So,
Yeah.
there's those things, right? So anyway, all that long thing to say is that if you know you're procrastinating something, break it down as small as possible. Doesn't matter how small, just break it down as small as possible. And and once you find that point, then you kind of do a little reflection. Okay, well, what can I do to make this point either easier or maybe, have less resistance to it? How can I change it into an energizer to energize me? And if I can't do that, how can I make it easier? And if I can't do that, how can I maybe negotiate or figure out a different way to do it? And then, again, I have other examples like that, but I don't want to go on for 2 hours.
No, no. I think you hit the nail here because Chris, what happens is you said that you realize about the cold in the garage, and that small change made you go back. And it's something which is we don't realize at the stage when we are procrastinating, but until we like split it into small you know parts. So let me share something. So I don't read books. And a lot of your listeners might agree that they can relate to that they don't like to read book because of the way information is presented to us nowadays. You have YouTube, we have lots of social media platforms, and we have a lot of digital newspaper, news magazines, and everything online, right? But I used to read books a lot when I was in university, and I think something happened and I stopped doing it. But my partner, she reads book like 60, 70 books in every year. So I think she might have not did it on purpose, but she did it to make sure that I get into the habit. She always takes me to these libraries. And I didn't used to like it when I used to go into these libraries because they're quite boring when you don't want to look at the books, right? But then because, we celebrate appreciation day. So like, when it's her birthday, we call it, Kami Appreciation Day. And then we do all the things what she likes. She likes to go to the museum. She likes dinosaurs. She likes, eating cookies or mushrooms. We do all these things. But one of the things we have to do is go into these libraries, different cities, wherever we are. And one day, I remember we were somewhere in the south of London, southeast. We went to a library, and that day I bought my first book after like decades. Like I think I spent £10 or something because I really, really like the title of the book. So I bought it. What did I do? I came home, I put it next to my bed, the chest we have next to our bed. I hardly read like couple of pages and I never opened that book. But then something weird happened. Then my partner had changed her job. So instead of going to different days to Central London, we started going to go to the Central London the same day, which is Tuesday. So now we started taking the same train at 7 o'clock to go to the Central London if we are going to the office, right? Now I see her sitting in front of me because in our trains we have this table in the middle and then you can sit in front of each other. I see her reading books, and every single person in the coach either scrolling their phone or sleeping. And it's a ride, 35 minutes, good ride to Central London. By the time we reach to the station, she closes a book, she goes to her workplace, I go to mine. But I started noticing this happiness on her face that no matter what she's reading, she's happy when she gets off the train at London Bridge. And because I'm scrolling through all these social media platforms, I am not that happy. I'm confused, or maybe I want to go back to my phone and scroll it again. Then suddenly I found a book in my backpack. One day we were going to the work, and instead of opening my phone and scrolling through the social media, I started reading it. And I kind of liked it. And then suddenly, after a couple of days, I came home and then I got a gift from her, which was a very expensive bookmark. So now I don't have to fold the pages of the book. And now I finished the first book. I'm reading the second one, which is Psychology of Money, which you might have already read through multiple times. And I've already issued another book, which is called Prediction Machines, another one, which is on my chest. So it's like, there are things which around you, if you try or somebody else try to change that, might help you to get what you've been planning from a long, long time. Because remember, I used to read a lot of books when I was in university. Then I stopped and I always thought, oh, I should read books because I'm a founder. How can I not do that? And I started that. Now, and you wouldn't believe it, I actually have a book published also myself because I got into the reading Then it encouraged me to write. And then I have a small, 100 pages book published on Amazon. But you see that small change of opening the book from my backpack in the train and the encouragement from my partner's side to give me that bookmark and everything. This is all like I don't know how to explain it, but it's like changing the circumstances and environment and making things a little easier could encourage you to get out of your procrastination or to reach closer towards your goal, if that makes sense.
No, for sure, and there's multiple factors at play there, obviously. The fact that you had a partner that was also doing the same thing is obviously important. It's sort of an accountability check, right? Because again, when you see your partner doing something and you already thought, well, I should be doing more of that, then you're looking at that and it's almost like it's an external sort of crutch.
Mm.
So it's like, oh, right, I was going to do that. But now you have a little bit of a more of a reason to do it. And she's actually really smart and really intuitive then giving you the bookmark and encouraging you without saying, hey, you should read more books. It's very interesting, very interesting, very, very effective to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
excellent.
A funny thing happened afterwards. Like one day I came back and we were talking about, and I think we were discussing something. And I pointed out to her that, Cami, you should read more books. And then I'm such an idiot. I realized that, look, who I'm talking with. Like, she should be saying, and she pointed out to me, look, Ash, now you're asking me to read books. You just started, but she was happy about it, you know? So it happens unconsciously in your mind, and you don't realize it when it happens.
That's for sure. Well, Ash, it's been a really enlightening conversation. I've really enjoyed it. We are coming up close to the time. Is there anything that you wish I would have asked but didn't ask, or anything that you feel we should have covered that we didn't cover?
So I just wanted to make mention this that if any of your listeners listening to this podcast, if you're a charity or nonprofit, or if you're supporting any cause, happy to help. I run a couple of startups. One of my most successful one is called Art Circles. So if you want any community support, raising money, or building and close knit community in your demography, just feel free to reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. You can search me Ash Lonare, or just search Art Circles. I should be on the first page of Google, hopefully. And then, I'm mostly on the customer support, portal. So I'll be happy to help. And then again, thinking about Bridget, if you need an hand holding, I'm there. So give me a shout.
Excellent. What a great note to end the show on. And to our listeners, don't worry. You don't need to grab a pen or a pencil. We are going to have those in the show notes for you, so it'll be easy to find. Ash, thank you so much for being on the show. Again, it was a real pleasure. To all our listeners, thank you for tuning in. And, just remember, if you can't find that motivation or inspiration for yourself today, maybe just go out and try to be that inspiration and motivation for someone else. And we'll see you again next time.
Definitely.